Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of what I thought was a very insightful and multifaceted conference of the Swiss Finance Council. In order to merit all the contributions this morning, it will probably take an hour to summarize all this. What I realized, there are no easy answers to very complex questions. And since lunch is already waiting for you outside, let me be fairly brief and reflect maybe just on a few points this morning were made. And I want to highlight that I'm going to make this from a banking's perspective rather from a regulatory or policymaker's perspective. I think we started today with the presentation of the Swiss Finance Council's discussion paper and subsequently with the debate in our first panel on the management and the regulation of risk in global finance. One of the key takeaways for me was that after the robust actions taken at global level over the last 10 years to address the shortcomings in the financial systems, it is now time to acknowledge the completion of post-crisis reforms, assess their cumulative impacts and, where needed, make adjustments to policies and develop a forward-looking approach of futures engagements. It is evident, and it was mentioned particularly by Axel Weber, that the impact of higher regulatory costs not only weakens the profitability of the banking system, but also limits the bank's abilities to continue investing. What we heard this morning is very important, new technologies and to better analyze and address evolving risks, which will be crucial in light of their rapidly changing nature, as we've seen this morning as well. Transposing global standards in a consistent manner and without national gold plating or excessive national ring fencing is essential. Removing inconsistencies, outdated legislation, and closing regulatory gaps to ensure regulation is working as intended is vital to the prosperity of the European economy, given the role the banks play in its financing. Measures to enhance regulatory efficiency should start in the areas where unintended consequences are evident, including in areas such as excessively long and resolution plans, which need to be updated annually. We heard this morning. That limits the geographic ring fencing of resources and contradictory incentives arising from capital and liquidity regulations, although Mark Branson, I heard you say this morning, and it was very enlightening to me, that there is a role for authorities, i.e. central banks, in providing liquidity in the crisis. In the second panel of our conference, which we just finished before, we discussed ways to enhance cyber resilience. And as we have realized, this is a truly global challenge across all sectors and borders. A lot have been achieved, we talked about it, but to effectively tackling this evolving challenge, more needs to be done. This requires an even stronger cooperation among regulators and between the public and private sectors, including with third countries, as well as international and global alignment of security roles, regulation and practices. But data sharing, as we heard, is not always that easy. And as Urs mentioned, we have to get the basics done, and then we are already a step further. We did not have time to discuss this morning in a panel the third topic of our discussion paper, climate change risks and the role of financial system. But as mentioned by Thomas Pohl earlier in the morning, the issue of collaboration is very relevant also in this context, with close engagement between relevant players from governments, industry, and academia. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me sum up. We are facing new challenges, which are truly global in nature, as said before, and reach across sectorial boundaries. There is no American or European way to enhance cyber resilience, for example, and fighting climate change needs to encompass the key players across all industries, governments, and academia across the globe. I think 2019 would be an excellent opportunity for the European Union to lead in exploring new models of regulatory cooperation to tackle this risk of regulatory fragmentation, including through a greater industry outreach. Axel Weber mentioned this yesterday in a panel. Such an initiative would be closely aligned with the 2019 priorities stressed of the SFB, as outlined by its chairman, Randall Quarles, who stressed the importance of transparency and called for an increased engagement of key stakeholders. In closing, I want to thank you all, the distinguished panelists, but all of you here in the audience as well, for attending this year's event, and we're looking forward to welcoming you at one of our future conferences of the Swiss Finance Councils. Thanks again for joining us this morning, and enjoy lunch that will be served outside this room. Thank you very much.